All right, everybody, good evening. Thank you for coming. This is an emotional subject. It's a subject that we're approaching with humility, empathy, and taking everybody's concerns and the questions you might have into consideration before we move forward with anything with this dam. I'd like to recognize the people in the room. We have some county council members. Aaron Loudermilk's back there in the back here, if you want to give a wave. Marie Thieves, I believe, is here. There she is right there. Mike Morris, Commissioner. Mark Linkenbeard, Commissioner. Larry Robbins, our engineer. Terry Mossett, the Mossett Law Firm, represents us legally. Adam Grossman, Butte County Parks and Recreation Department. John Wright, our health insurance. So we have everybody here on our end to kind of go through the things we're going to discuss. So I quickly put a brief presentation together on behalf of the commissioners to kind of go through a little bit of the history, but I want to recognize one more person. We have a Markle in our presence. Nelson, will you raise your hand? Appreciate him being here. So quickly, we all know where Markle Mill Dam is. Maybe, Joey? Am I doing something wrong? I can't get it to go. I did that. We all know Abraham Markle built the dam in 1816, 1817. Quick cool note that we have come to find out is Mr. Markle hand-hewn his own timber, which the dam was originally timber, and it's probably underneath the concrete that's there. The success of the mill was very successful because it was 5 miles from Terre Haute, 4 miles from the Wabash River, which made it very successful. Abraham Markle's death. Major Markle died from a stroke or heart attack on March 26th of 1826. Interesting fact, Markle's estate was pretty complicated. He never had a living will. 320 acres went to Frederick Rapp, who later sold it to who we all commonly know as Chauncey Rose. Frederick Markle, Abraham's son, ran the mill until his death in 1866. And Frederick Markle built the Markle home across from the dam in 1848, and we have the residence of the Markle home here as well. I'm going to skip some of this stuff. We all know 1938, the house caught on fire, or the mill caught on fire at the top level. Of course, they didn't have the water services to put the fire out, so the mill burnt to the ground. But we can still see the foundation of where the mill was. After the fire, the mill property was bought by Anton Holman. In 1967, the mill site, which included the mill foundation and dam, was made a public park under the proprietorship of the Otter Creek Township trustee. I believe that was a dollar deal from the Holman family to either the township trustee or the town board. The spot today is a favorite picnic spot for area residents. In 1999, the Holman family deeded that property over to the county commissioners. So we're all aware, Mr. Lawrence is here, I believe your dad was involved in that, and you as well. A restoration project in 1983, that was, Mr. Lawrence, you might be able to correct me, but I believe that was all privately funded because it was a private project at that time. Correct? Yeah. 2002, 2003, restoration. The Butte County Commissioners got a grant for $8,765 for an archaeological investigation. Butte County, there was no question in 2002, 2003 that we once considered to rehabilitate the dam, build a new mill so it is fully functional. Obviously, that never came to fruition. The estimated cost to rebuild the mill in 2002 was $360,000. The estimated cost to repair the dam and the mill both was estimated $1.2 million. At that time, the county worked with Rose Holman to get those costs. 2010, Vigo County recorded its first loss under the ownership of Vigo County. A 21-year-old male was swept over the dam. Because of the high water at the time and the hydraulic issues with the dam, he unfortunately was under the dam for quite a long time and wasn't found for almost 30 hours downstream. There's a lot of speculation of some deaths before then, but since it was speculation. There's no surprise that there's been dangers at the dam. November of 2016, a documentary called Over, Under, Gone, The Killer in Our Rivers was produced by WFYI. If you have not watched that, I would encourage you to watch that. That has been distributed all over the state, all over the country, really. The Indiana Department of Natural Resources and the Indiana Department of Homeland Security teamed up on a public awareness project known as Dam Dangerous to educate the public about the dangers of Lowhead dams. That was around 2017. In March of 2020, this is a big one, Indiana legislature passed House Bill 1099, which prohibits people from accessing Lowhead dams in the water within 50 feet of it. Some issues that we have had in county government, and Adam can speak to this, is we consistently put out signage, brand new. In about 2 days, it's stolen. It's always been taken. So we have new signage out there right now. We've added 15 extra zip ties, maybe a lot soon, but I'm not sure. But we have that signage out there to try to keep people off the dam. But we all know, we go there and we see people walking across that dam or fishing off that dam. Indiana Department of Natural Resources continues to identify extremely dangerous Lowhead dams to this day, which leads me to the letter that we got from the DNR. This is dated August 9th, 2021. To the Vigo County Parks and Recreation Department, the letter states that we must comply with warning standards, which we do, the signage. Maintain $1 million of general liability insurance to cover claims from injuries and death that the Lowhead Dam may cause. And inform the IDNR of ownership change no more than 30 days after the change. Some things that I have heard are, what are we insured for? We have Mr. John Wright here for that, so I'm going to let him touch on that for about 30 seconds here on what exactly is insured within the park in the dam.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you everybody for coming out. Basically, we are insured for injuries or death from the dam. We are not insuring the structure itself, so if anything were to happen to the structure, we would not the insurance carrier would not repair it or replace it. It's only injuries from the dam.
Thank you, John. And I know you all have a ton of questions. So on your table is some paper and a pen. If you have a question, give it to me. Maybe Tammy will stay around, or Marie afterwards will get those questions. The reason we're not having public input tonight is because we are learning as you are learning. I think a lot of questions that the commissioners might have are probably the same questions you have. I think after we hear from Jerry, in 2 weeks we'll regroup here. If you still have questions, we'll discuss those questions. In the meantime, if you have questions and you want to put it on paper, please put it on paper, put your phone number, stuff like that. We will call you and try to answer those questions to the best of our ability. Also, we'll discuss those questions at the next public meeting. So we'll be March 1st from 6 to 7:30 at the same spot here, 2 weeks from today. So what have we done since we got the letter? We engaged in ecology, which is what Mr. Sweden's about to speak about. Engaged in archaeology. We talked to engineering firms. We dealt with Mr. Wright, with our insurance company, Mr. Modest with our legal team. We started community conversation, and tonight we're having this informational meeting. So hopefully, when Mr. Sweeten is finished, he will answer a lot of our questions, and we'll move on from there. But I just want to be completely clear. This group of commissioners, Mike, Mark, and I, and Adam, we want to be as transparent as possible with all of you. We're not making a decision tonight. We're not making a decision tomorrow, maybe not even this month. I mean, we're all here to just learn and understand the right ways to move forward emotionally and physically. So with that, Mr. Sweeten.
Thanks, Chris. So nice to see so many folks here tonight and see this kind of interest from a community relative to a very important part of your culture here. And I appreciate the opportunity to come and share with you my experience with removing dams.
Just click that button.
Which one?
Just the touchpad.
The touchpad. I can do that. So, let's see if it worked. Hey, it did work. What do you know about that? So, I am a retired professor. I taught for many years at a little college up north called Manchester College. Anybody ever heard of it? Wow, that's good. It's not a very big place, and I'm a stream ecologist by training. I study fish, I study freshwater mussels, and I study how lakes and streams function. And while I was at the college, of course, I was raising young biologists, young scientists. And one of the rivers in our state that goes right to our campus was the Eel River in northern Indiana. And during my tenure, there was a program that we had a chance to participate in to remove a couple of low-head dams from the Eel River. I knew nothing about low-head dams at that time, other than my professional training as a scientist in stream ecological work. And up at that point, nobody had taken out a low-head dam in partnership with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. This was back in 2012. And so we participated in that program, and we removed 2 dams. And at one time, there were 14 dams on the Eel River back in the day. Over time, nature took out 8 of them. And so there were 6 remaining. And so the one in North Manchester, where the college was mostly broken down. And there were just lots of things we didn't know about taking out a dam from a river. For example, does it do more harm than good to the stream? Does it hurt the fish? Does it help the fish? What about the sediment behind the dam? And we had a whole myriad of questions, and being a researcher, that's our world. We try to answer questions with data. And so we set up sort of a standard operating procedure of collecting data from removing the dam at North Manchester, and then there was another dam that was partly broken about 6 miles upstream. So we took them out. We studied them. We looked at lots and lots of different things of how the river changed. And so while I was at the college, we removed 2 additional dams. So we learned a lot about what happens when a dam is removed from a stream. And at that time, I really didn't think much about human safety. I was really more interested in the ecology of the river. But in the meantime, a young person got killed at one of the dams that we had money to take out. And this was in 2017. And I met his mother. This young fellow's mother got a hold of me, and it was one of the saddest conversations I've ever had in my life. In fact, the twin sister of the young fellow that got killed at that dam wrote a letter to me, and I still keep it here today. And I'll leave it here if any of you are interested in reading it. So, when I retired in 2018, my wife and I always say we just thought we were going to go fishing. I had no interest or no intent to start a business. But I started getting calls from communities who had these old antiquated dams, and they knew we had done research on these things, and they asked if we could help them. And so, to make a longer story very short, we started this small company called Ecosystems Connections Institute. And we do a variety of things. We do work with fish. We do help lakes with water quality issues. We help with stream restoration. And we also got more deeply involved in helping communities remove dams. And so we call that ecological restoration of a stream. And since then, we have helped, we're working with the city of Marion to remove a dam from their city. We removed 2 dams from Indian Creek in Corydon. We removed the dam out of Crawfordsville in Sugar Creek. We removed a dam up near Fort Wayne in Cedar Creek. I'm forgetting something. Yeah, 2 dams in Logansport in 2021. And each time we help the communities, these are all interest coming from the mayors, the Logansport Municipal Utility Board. These were towns that realized that these dams were a liability. They weren't being used for their original function. But all the while, we were continuing to do research to try to, again, understand how does the stream change. And with that, we've looked at, again, the fisheries, the freshwater mussels, and we helped write grants to bring in the resources to remove the dams. And there's a program in the United States. It's called the National Fish Passageway Program. And it is money that's used to remove old dams to provide passageway so fish can go upstream and downstream. And when you think about fish migrating, you most often think about trout and salmon moving from the sea to spawn in the streams. But it turns out that 85% of all of the fish species in our Indiana streams migrate upstream and downstream as part of their life. So having that connection with the streams is really quite important. So one of the things I learned, besides about fish and the sediment and all of the other things that go along with the stream ecological restoration, is how important this historic component is to these old dams and how attached people get to old dams. Look at this room. You get, there's part of your culture. It's part of you remember going here as a child, perhaps. So I quickly realized we had to be very sympathetic and very aware that folks really are very passionate about these structures. But we also learned that they're very dangerous, and we know people get hurt, they get killed. We know they're a fish passage barrier, and as I mentioned, they're important for fish to go upstream and downstream and for freshwater mussels. But also, one of the things that I've learned from coming to meetings like this is that there's sometimes misconceptions. That they think that if you take out a dam, a low-head dam, that there's going to be increased flooding. And that's simply not true. The types of dams that we work with are what we call run-of-the-river dams. They have no flood control whatsoever. And they really don't even change the 100-year flood elevation. So they really are irrelevant relative to flood mitigation. So this is the Collamer Dam. I'm going to show you just a few pictures so you can kind of see some of the things that we've done. This is the dam that killed this young person I was telling you about in 2017. And the water was about at this rate. And it looks very stable. It's made of concrete. But in 2017 in October, one day, just one day it was there. I'm not blocking your way. You can tell me go like this or like that. I usually don't stand in one spot very long. So what happened was the foundation of this dam blew out. What you can't really see, you see that the pool behind the dam is gone, and there's a hole underneath that dam about the size of a pickup truck. That's how quickly a dam can be destroyed. And the owner, I should mention this, the owner of this dam tried to put sandbanks in that hole. And it didn't work. And we had the money to take it out. And so this happened in October, and we were able to remove this dam in January of the following year. This is the Logansport Dam, where we just did some work in 2021 for the Logansport Municipal Utilities. This dam was large, 425 feet long and about 10 feet tall. The city used it as a pool to draw out their drinking water, but they changed their water source from this pool behind this dam to wells, so they didn't need the dam any longer. So they asked us if we would help them remove it. And we had a meeting, a public meeting like this. There were probably half the number of people that are here, and many of them with questions like I know that you all do. And we kind of worked through them, but this is what it looks like today. They have one of the most beautiful streams in northern Indiana. That dam was built on an old coral reef, fossilized coral reef. And once we removed the dam, it allowed the stream to go back to its original pathway and back to where it was prior to the dam being constructed. And one of the things that happened with this dam is that we knew, by the way, James Heinrich, raise your hand, James. He is an archaeologist who has done some research on the Markle Dam but he also helped us with this Logansport Dam. And he told us that there was a report in his research. He found out that there was actually a dam built prior to this concrete dam and was commissioned by John Tipton in 1828. That was just the number I was going to say, but I was afraid to say it. But when we took down the dam, we didn't see any evidence of it. So what happened when the dam came out, the sediment behind the dam moved. Oh, I gotta go there. Oh man, I got way ahead of myself. Can I come back to that? Thanks. So one of the things we did when we look at a dam is as I mentioned, we look at the fish. And here I have a graph for you to look at. This isn't biology class. But over on the right side of that graph is I'll just call it a fish score, where we look at the types of fish. There's lots of things that go into that index. And then you can see where the dam is. And 0 to 500, 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 1,500, 15 to 2,000, 1,500 to 2,000. Those are meters. And so what you see is 53 on the left side. You see that? That's a fish score. When you go behind the dam, notice that the fish scores go down. And when you get out away from the dam, the fish scores go back up. We have seen this in every place we've removed a dam. And the fish behind a dam, the fish community, is typically very poor. And there's not as many species, and there's some other issues. Well, when we took out the Logansport Dam, we knew that there were 48 species of fish below the dam that we didn't have on our list above the dam. And in the Eel River, we had 61 species of fish. Within 9 months, we had 13 new species. We've been doing research on this. And so in our sampling last summer, we found 13 new species. Some had traveled as far as 35 miles upstream. And one species of that fish was this long, but 35 miles. And I'm telling you this so you understand that the importance of what fish want to do when a dam is removed. Now, here's where I'm going to retract a little bit. Here we found the foundation of that dam that was commissioned in 1828. And what you can see is, here's the foundation, right here. See the wood there? And so James recorded it, and this was about 300 feet upstream of where the concrete dam that we took out. And the city of Logansport, or the utility board, they went out with their excavator and they took all those cheap pieces of wood out of the river, put them up on the bank, and the city used those to kind of create an example of what the dam would have looked like. The timbers were as good a shape as the day they were put in the water. They were just very impressive. Some of the hewn beams were over 50 feet long. And so this is part of what we would call a wood crib dam, where the wood was placed in the river, boulders were put into the cribs, the boulders would trap the sediment, and that's what backed the water up. But as you know, over time, the wood that's exposed to the water and oxygen is going to start to rot. And so what's the response to that is put concrete over the top. That's what's been done at the Markle Dam. It's been done at numerous dams that we've actually worked on. So the dam that you see, in the case of the Markle Dam, what you see with the concrete is really not what the dam looked like when it was first built. This is Indian Creek. This is down near Corydon. This was a project that we worked with the city of Corydon, and also for the reintroduction of a big salamander called a hellbender. They're about 1 foot long, and this was a pretty sizable dam. You can see the pool behind the dam. We removed this dam in 2017. This is what it looked like right after. It looks pretty rough. It takes about a year for a stream to heal after you remove a dam. But nature's very resilient. It knows what to do. This is what it looked like 1 year later. It's a beautiful, free-flowing stream with a gravel bottom. Here you can see the place where the dam was located. We left part of the dam to support the wing wall, but you can see where the dam was and how the stream has recovered. This is an aerial view, and you can see that large gravel bottom. Nature knows what to do. It knows how to heal itself once an obstruction like this is removed. The fish stores, this is a graph that's very similar to what I showed you before. If you look at the gray line, the bottom one, you see how it goes down and then back up. So these fish stores go down and back up. The red line represents what the fish were like after the dam was removed. It all evened out and became like it was downstream and way upstream of the pool. But one of the more interesting things we discovered in this case, there was a lot of concern over the fishing. Well, you're going to ruin the fishing if you take out the dam. We know our data shows improvement in the fish community after a dam is removed. But many people like fishing at dams because the fish get pooled up at the bottom. If they think if you take out the dam, it's going to ruin the fishing. In Indian Creek, and we've seen this other places, the fishing for smallmouth bass and spotted bass is nothing short of remarkable. And there's people we spoke with at public meetings after the dam was removed, and that was one of their comments. They talked about how they didn't expect the fishing to improve, but it was improved way over what anybody thought it would. And there's a couple of fish that we sampled. We use electricity. So we electrofish the stream, and fish always bite on electricity. We had no trouble catching it. And it gives us a good chance, though, to see what's living there. So the Markle Dam is in bad shape, structurally. Nature is going to remove that dam. That's maybe the bad news. We know it's going to happen. It's the fate of every dam that's put in a river. Rivers are powerful forces. We don't know the day, we don't know the time, but this dam, based on our experience, showing severe signs of stress. You see the water coming through the cracks in the dam, through the top, into the sides, and underneath the dam. This is a picture I took from an article. In fact, it was a fishery article about some surveys that were done. And this was 2014, and this is the sluiceway that shoved the water over sideways. You know what it's this, and over to the mill. This was 2021 when we were there. We suspect, again, there's no guarantees with this. I mean, I'm a scientist, I love data, but sometimes you just can't add numbers to everything that you do. We suspect this is the side of the dam that will be most vulnerable to breaching, is on the left-hand side. But on the right, so if you're looking downstream and on the opposite side of that sluice gate, we also see water coming around the right side of the dam. So there's water coming around the right side. The sluice gate is deteriorating. The water's going through there. You have water seeping through holes in the dam, water seeping under the dam, and this dam is in very poor condition. The other thing that we found in our work is that the water quality in the pool behind the dam can be quite poor in the summertime. And so this is a picture that we took in 2021. And you can see that green color, and you can see the sort of the scum on top of the water. That's an indication of a blue-green algal bloom. And if those get severe enough, dogs especially are vulnerable to that. I don't know if it's happened here, but there are places in Indiana where you get blue-green algae blooms that it will either make a dog sick or cause them to die. But clearly the water quality behind the dam is deteriorated and compromised. This goes away when a dam is removed. We see it we see it all the time. We're working with the city of Marion to remove quite a large dam in their city. It's right next to a park, very similar to the Markle Dam. And the water quality in that pool looks very similar to this. So I think with that, I'm happy to entertain questions from you if there are some specific questions. And James Heimlich is here, the archaeologist. So if you have a historical question, you know what I'm going to do with this? I'm going to hand it to James. But if you have a question, I'll try to do my best to answer it. Yes?
You haven't addressed fish ladders.
So,
As if you've got two choices.
right.
Tear the dam out, or you leave it.
It is one possibility. We have done that, actually. There's a dam in the Eel at Stockdale. It's about 35 miles up from the Wabash. And in fact, it's only 2 miles from where we live. And they spent a lot of money to renovate the mill. It still functions, and I'd encourage any of you to go there. The Stockdale Mill Dam is really a cool place. And they still use the dam to power the mill. And so we actually worked with a scientist out of Massachusetts, and we installed a prototype fish passageway. It's not a ladder, it's a different sort of a system.
Well, I mean, that's what they're called.
Well, so, yeah, okay. And so we found this fish ladder to be very effective in that case. In the case of Stockdale, the dam is in still structurally very good condition relative to the case here. This dam would have to be repaired if you choose, or if there's some conversation about providing fish passage with such a thing that way. But yes, that is one tool that's available. Any other questions? Yeah?
Well, the salamanders you mentioned, I didn't hear you say
Oh.
that they came back.
The hellbenders?
Yeah.
So Purdue is doing the research on that. That's a great question. The question was, what about the salamanders, the hellbenders? The last known population of hellbenders in Indiana is in the Blue River. And so they're raising young hellbenders in the lab at Purdue, and they're putting them back in the Blue River. They're waiting, my conversation with them is they're waiting for about another year to allow the stream in Indian Creek to become stable, and then they're going to start transplanting hellbenders into Indian Creek. Great question. Yes?
My next one is the Asian carp.
Yes?
I know I've seen them at the bottom of this.
Yes.
I kayaked from there.
Yeah.
I kayaked from the source of this thing.
Yeah.
Or east, however you want to look at it. We're going to break it down.
Yes.
Those are already an issue as they this right now. And then my next thing is this creek drying up. I have seen it dry, and then people from their side-by-side, four-wheelers, ATVs, etc., from driving up and down this dam when we get a drought.
So I think there's a couple of questions here. What about Asian carp and the risk Asian carp might pose going upstream if the dam is removed? Okay, so great question. Actually, when we took down the last two Logansport dams in the Eel that were 1 mile up from the Wabash, we did an extensive study to try to understand what the risk of opening up the Eel River to Asian carp. But we hadn't seen any Asian carp in all of our sampling. I've done a tremendous amount of research, fish surveys with electricity, and we had never seen one. So we did an extensive study. In fact, we have ongoing research looking at how do the Asian carp respond to a river like the Eel. The Eel is 3 or 4 times the size of Otter Creek. And we have, in just one sampling year, I can tell you we have seen no evidence of the Asian carp having any interest in coming up into the Eel. We think they're happy in the Wabash, full of green soup. And it's nice and warm, and there's nice deep pools, and why would they want to go into a clear, cool stream? And so far, now we hope to be able to study this for another 2 years. And let me just say that in my business, one of the things we always are doing, asking ourselves as scientists is, does this restoration of this system, is there more risk to harm it, or is there more benefit that will come from it? So we're always wrestling with those kind of questions. Asian carp is one. Even if adult Asian carp come into Otter Creek, they're not gonna go very far, they're not gonna be happy there. And I don't think, they're not gonna be an issue. Will the water levels drop if the Marble Dam's removed? Absolutely. Will they be floatable levels? Sometimes of the year they will. Obviously, it's no different than any other stream. Last summer, we had a really dry late summer, didn't we? And there was probably in fact, there may have only been water squirting to the dam at Otter Creek instead of going over it. And I know in the EO, there were we just had skinny water. But that's true any year. I mean, sometimes you have enough water, sometimes you don't. And in a stream the size of Otter Creek, clearly it's gonna be too low to run a kayak. In terms of your question about the four-wheelers, I don't have an answer for that, other than, I don't know if there's a county ordinance for such a thing or not, but that would be more of a legal question. But those are all really good questions, thank you. Did you have a follow-up for that?
The legality of the situation,
Yeah,
allow access for people on other people's private property.
Oh, walking. Yeah, right. So technically, yeah, you're right. This is a non-navigable stream, so people own the bottom of the river, so you can float but not walk.
And I know there's not like a mass amount of people that buy this stream.
Yeah, yeah.
The average street in Wyoming County.
Yep.
Area.
Yeah.
I know I've been north of this dam from the range, goes down, and it's not. But if they destroyed that, it's gonna try that eco back there, and I know there's fish back there that have been fished.
Yeah. Well, if you're talking about removing the dam and what will the fish do?
Yeah,
They-
just start trying to,
Oh,
trying to bring up farther up the stream.
fish know what to do.
I mean,
They will. They'll be just fine though. Yeah. Great question. Yeah.
Will the structure of the main, or the building, will it remain after if you do take the dam out?
Which-
The middle part?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
will stay there as a
Yep.
marker?
Yep. We're not, and so that's where James comes in as the archaeologist. Not negotiate. We talk over what is structurally, has a structural integrity that we can leave for historical purposes, and what really needs to come out. And I'm sure that we'll have that conversation. Oh, okay, great. When you want to talk fish again, I'll get this back. Go ahead.
I have a question. That, the drop of that over the mill, from the top to the bottom of that dam, is 8 to 10 feet of drop. On the north side, there's probably, it's only about 2.5 feet deep. The rest of it is mud, silt, whatever. So you take that dam out of there, and that water level, that's got to get to the lower level, is that going to create a swampy area on to the south of that dam? Is it going to drain some of the ponds and areas up there in Homer's Park that comes down there? How long is it going to be before the channel will come through there? We've got a terrific amount of mud on the south side of that dam right now.
Great question. Can I let him then we come back to your question. So one, there you go. Okay.
Hi, I'm James Heimlich with Orbis Environmental Consulting. I've been working with Jerry and his company for a number of years now. And I'll answer the question here in just a sec, give a little bit more information. But as far as the ecology of the waterway, and I've talked to the state of Indiana on many occasions, and I do not work for this company. We do partner on jobs, but this company is held in very high regard in knowing what they're doing with the ecology. So your waterway is probably in the best hands if you allow them to do the work that needs to be done here. So that's not just for me. The state of Indiana would say that to you if they were here as well with these types of dam removal projects. As far as the history, I'm your person. So I'm a Hoosier. I've been here all my life. I've worked here and around Terre Haute for a number of years. Coal mine surveys, doing history and archaeology surveys for a number of years. Taylorville, I just did not too long ago, helped with a trail project there. And what my passion is to recapture and retell the history of something before something changes. That is my goal. I am a Hoosier. I am proud of this state. I want to tell the stories and I want to preserve it, not just for us, but for the generations to come. And so I'm very passionate about that. And this dam has, and the mill site has an amazing history that is very unique to the area. And so we want to preserve that and tell that story. Now, specifically, because this goes along with it, this is on the National Register. And that means it's under protection for federal funding when you are altering or removing or what they call an adverse effect on a National Register property. So there is legal protection for it, for some degree of protection for it when federal dollars are at play with potentially altering something. And so what Jerry was alluding to is this agreement that we would have to have called a Memorandum of Agreement, an MOA, that the county and all of the stakeholders, the organizations, you people have an opportunity to speak to your representatives, and they all come to the table, these organizations, and we discuss what do we need to do to preserve as much history and importance of this site as we can, but also continue with the process that needs to be done. So Jerry alluded to this, that time is not in our favor because the dam is failing, that water is going around on one side where it shouldn't be ever going. It is spilling into the mill foundation site and doing damage to the most important part of the history of the property, which is the mill site. The dam is important. The mill site's more important from a historical perspective on what tells the story of that time period. And so it's damaging that site every day that the water flows there, that it's unchecked. Now, that can't be helped. Also going against you is that there's a lot of money that would have to be poured into this from your local resources if you wait to do a feasibility study to address, could we do a fish ladder? Could we repair? Could we rehab? Could we do things? Well, it's bleeding through the dam already, the water. It's going around on both sides. Jerry let you know what happened at Colomer. It can be a very short period that a dam can give out. Now, this dam is built a little bit different. So if you were to rehab it, from my research, the original dam is still there underneath the concrete. One side was washed out in the 1850s. On the north side, it was repaired, but the majority of the dam, the wood cribbing and everything would still be there underneath the concrete. If you were to rehab it with federal dollars or whatever, because it's on the National Register, it may be cost prohibitive to find the resources, the expertise to do it in a way that would be acceptable by federal standards. I can't speak to what that dollar amount would be, but I've never had a municipality choose to do that because it was very difficult financially to do. If you do not act, that is a choice, and as Jerry said, eventually we'll lose the dam. When it does breach fully, we could lose more history by not acting than doing a controlled removal and keeping part of the dam where we can on the sides out of the water to still show the setting and the feeling of where the dam once was and still have a representation of that, plus the mill, and hopefully encourage the waterway to go away from the mill. And so by acting and using the grants that are already here and available that Jerry's company is working with, that saves financially for the county. That also saves time that you don't have because the process has already started, and the longer you wait, something worse could happen to it. And it also is better for the historic resource if we can control the removal of the dam rather than have a breach. And I just want to add that I know these dams are significant and important. I just want to echo that. It's hard to lose that. What I try to do is at least preserve the story of what it is. Try to preserve as much history as we can, because the original use of these dams, it's no longer useful for that purpose. It's not functioning for industry. That's what built this area. It's very important. That history is important. This area would not be where it is without that dam and those mills that were there. However, that time has come and gone, and we don't need that for that purpose. And now the emphasis is on the healthy restoration of a waterway, which is something that we do need and will continue for generations. And so we have to give and take, because they're both important, but the one is being impacted negatively, the waterway, and we no longer have the use that we once had for the historic dam, and we're losing it because it's failing. So as you consider your questions and your what you say to your representatives here in the county and for the dam, keep that in mind, that no one wants to tear this down just because they want to tear it down. If it were strong and healthy and could go another 100 years, there'd probably be another discussion going on here. But that's not where we are today.
I got a question. Yeah. So I've had a lot of people ask me, can we rebuild the dam? Could you tell us if we did rebuild the dam, it would not look like this? Is that correct?
Right. So can we rebuild it and look the same? No, you cannot legally. So if you're going to reconstruct it, to make improvements on it, it would have to be stepped because of the law, because these low-head dams are so dangerous. Yes, sir.
This is kind of a question for both of you fellows, maybe help me understand together, and Mr. Wright as well. I've lived here long enough to know that that's July. That's a 6-foot person standing about what is pool in July. Upstream, you've got the railroad bridge with foundations, and this time it's got a couple washout areas up there, but it's more like 3 to 4 feet. When the creek heals, with reference to that person standing, how high is all that silt and everything is going to wash in going to come up? Because what we're going to do is we're going to lose all that footing around those concrete piers. And as a historian, I just wonder, is there any information on the underpinnings of the railroad tracks? And if the removal of this causes an issue with the railroad, would the county then be on the hook for it?
Yeah, so as to the history of the railroad and its design for the bridge there, we'd have to look to see what's available. Railroads are a little tricky to deal with because they don't like to tell you things. It takes, yes, they kind of do their own thing, yes. But it's something to be looked at. We've done dam removals and there's been railroad crossings right near it. And so that has not been an issue. Jerry can speak to how we lower the water level in stages to help with some of that and the sediment being released and all that. But historically, we have not had an issue. We've not had an interest or issue with any history being affected by the removal of the water when it's controlled with bridge crossing or the railroad crossings or the dam itself.
Great question, by the way, and it kind of ties into your question about where is the sediment going to go, I think generally was what you were asking. And so, but let's talk about the railroad pillars first.
You got about 5 foot of water underneath that bridge.
Right.
And the footers are gonna be another 5 foot.
Yep. And so we would want to verify that to make sure that they're down on solid ground, that when we would call that the head cut. So when you take out that dam, the question is for you folks in the back is, what about the railroad pillars upstream and what's going to happen to the sediment that's up in behind the pool, in the pool? Is that kind of generally right?
Yeah, what kind of effect is it gonna have
Right.
upstream
Yep.
ponds and flow?
Yep. So, yes. And so we would want to verify the footers of the railroad for sure, because we don't want to do any damage to any infrastructure, and clearly we wouldn't want to do any damage to a railroad bridge. But I suspect that they're on plenty solid ground, but let's just, for a minute, let's just say they are. The sediment will move and it's going to cut, and it's going to fill the pool that's below the dam, mostly. And the rest of it will go right on downstream. This is sediment that was naturally part of that stream system, and it's just got plugged up there. And you're right, if you could walk out there, it's not very deep. In fact, if it was 3 feet deep, we surveyed that. We have a map of the whole bottom of the river there. But yeah, right, so it's not very deep. But the sediment is going to equal out at where that person is walking, where their feet are. That's where the new bottom, that bottom of the river will be the same. But that plunge pool, where that darker colored water is probably, I don't know, I'm going to guess, is that all deeper is? I thought we had a little
You get
deeper.
up by the dam and you'll find there's a notch.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
How do you know, Scott?
I didn't see a sign.
Yeah. That's when they were stolen.
You want to plead the fifth on that? So, yeah, so that's just going to all equal out. The sediment that's behind the dam is actually part of the stream system. It's going to move right through the channel. And if you want to know what the stream is going to look like upstream, go down below the bridge, the bridge, and that's what it's going to look like. I saw a hand over here, so. Yes, sure.
Okay, this was in response, and no disrespect
That's
at
okay.
all,
Sure.
but
Thank you for that.
you were telling about the safety issue
Yes.
with the young man
Yeah.
in another
Yeah.
place that was killed, and you said that the dam killed him.
He got caught in the hydraulic recirculation of the dam.
But your comment was that the dam killed him, so how does an inanimate object break the law?
I'll rephrase it. He died at the dam as a result of the hydraulic recirculation. So the hydraulic recirculation caught him and pulled him in and just kept washing him around until he became unconscious.
Because, I mean, when it comes to safety issues,
Yeah.
I mean, I hike a lot. I go to a lot of different places. I go Cataract Falls. I mean, people make poor choices everywhere they go.
Yes.
I think it's a shame that we're gonna call this a safety issue and that it can take a life when it's the person's choice. There's got to be personal responsibility for people's choices on what they do. I mean, we can't blame it on, a place, because it happened. I mean, exactly. You can drown. I mean, I was at Cataract Falls one time a couple of years ago, and they had pulled the girl out of the water, which, poor choices.
Yep.
So we've got to this nation's getting away from personal responsibility, and that needs to be, to me, we can't blame this place, because this is a good place.
And that's and that's a good topic and a good conversation. But I would tell you that will have nothing to do with the structural integrity of this dam. And this dam is going to fall. It's going to come out. And it just is not going to last too much longer.
So what we're hearing is structurally it's just a facade.
Structurally, it's unsound. I actually had an engineer that we work with from Burke Engineering, and then the State Department of Natural Resources, Division of Water, had their engineers here to look at this dam, and they all concluded the same thing. They didn't say that the failure was imminent. Imminent means that it's going to collapse in the next hour, but it's going to be a relatively short period of time in the life of the dam. Yes.
The dam was built on bedrock, limestone.
This dam?
This dam was built on limestone bedrock.
Yeah. Yes. Correct?
Yeah, I believe
Yes. Yes.
I think we all want to know how much effort was put into finding out if funds were available to replace the dam in a step manner, as has been allotted to tearing it down. We want to know that every effort is being made
Right.
to find funds to replace the dam. So I understand your position on the fish. That's most
And perhaps that might be a good question to put on your piece of paper. Oh, you're gonna, okay.
So I think that's the next step, right? I mean, we're here tonight to learn about the ecological part of this, the waterway, the stream. I can confidently tell you that we know in 2002 or 2001 that it was $1.5 million or $2 million to restore the dam and the mill. We know today that these costs are going to be easily $4 or $5 million to build a step dam there. The important thing to realize is we're all used to a low head dam with a waterfall going over the dam, where a step dam is just going to be a small stream trickling over about 4 or 5 steps. The other important thing to realize with the bedrock comment and the river that was up here earlier is the way it has kind of a white water effect, rapid effect on the creek. That could be something that we could see after the dam was removed too. But I want to reiterate, we're not tearing down the dam today, tomorrow, or next month. We're having this conversation right now to discuss these things with you guys. So if you have a question about the ecology part of it, Mr. Sweet will be happy to answer. Other than that, we'll deal with that next week.
Yeah, I'm really concerned with the sediments behind the dams.
Yeah.
I fished the Wabash, I fished the mouth of the Wabash on Creek Creek. At this present time, it's full of sediment the way it is. At the mouth of that, you release that there, it's going to take and plug that mouth of that river and that creek. And it'll back up.
So what we found, I can tell you what happened in Eel, where we had the pool behind the Eel River Dam, it was much larger than this, extended for a mile upstream. And the sediment behind the dam landed in the Wabash River and just built a huge gravel bar. And that's where the river wanted it. And that's where it needs to be.
Yeah, we got too many sandbars right now in that Wabash. I bet you we sure fins and stuff on it.
Yeah.
But I'm concerned about the beautiful rocks below that. I like the rocks.
Yeah.
That's what I see. I fished that creek since I was a young kid. I waded that creek.
Yeah.
I fished the pools, I caught smallmouth out of it.
Yeah.
I'm really concerned about it. It's like taking your granddad's picture and putting it. That's what I feel like.
I'm sorry. You feel that way? Yeah. Did you have a question? Yeah.
Is it likely that the sediment is gonna fill a lot of the holes that do already exist in the creek? Is it gonna end up being a more flat creek, or is it likely that new holes are gonna form with such along that?
So the question is, will the stream become just a flat bottom, even without any pools? No. The river will have, the stream, Otter Creek will have the same configuration. It will have the same riffle pool. We call those riffles and pools. They'll still be there. The sediment will move through those pools just like they're doing now. In fact, what you'll end up with is above the dam, you'll end up with more riffles and pools that you'll see after the dam, if the dam is removed, I'll put it that way. Yeah. Yes.
My concern is, I've lived in Vigo County all my life, born and raised here. In Vigo County, people tear things down, history's gone. You've got the Four Corners downtown. There's so many buildings that I can think of in Terre Haute that they just go, somebody decides, hey, we don't want to mess with it, so they just tear them down. And there's not much history left in Vigo County for this. And that's why people are tired of it.
Sure.
Because there's history there.
Sure. Yeah, excellent point. And that's why we have people like James who do an excellent job.
People have to fight in order to get anyone to save a building downtown Terre Haute. They just, it's gone. Tear it down, Terre Haute House, tear it down. You know, Four Corners Railroad Station, gone.
And again,
Dispensary building, because somebody wants that property to do something else with on their own. That's why people get angry in Vigo County.
So one of the things that we do and can do with these memorandum of agreements that I talked about, so that we can have an agreement by different people, different groups what do we do with that history? Because we don't want to lose it. And so, even though some parts of this site, the dam is not the entire site. There's the house, there's the mill site, there are archaeological sites there that the public doesn't know generally about where they are, but archaeologists know. There's stuff in the ground that tell a history of when that was occupied. Some of it's prehistoric, some of it's historic. There's the dam itself, and there's all kinds of contributing parts to that. The dam's one part. But we will lose some history if the dam's removed. So what do you do with that? Well, we try to mitigate that. So some of the things that we can do, we can leave part of the dam in place. We, like my company, like we did with Logansport, before we take the dam out, we use drone footage, we do videos, we do pictures before, so the dam in its current condition. We record it being torn down, and we record afterwards and anything that we may find after. And then we produce a video that the municipality or county can have, and you can have it in a museum, can make it public, and do all kinds of things so that we document the resource before it's altered, the process of it being altered, and then the aftermath. Pictures can be taken, displays can be put up in the park to record some of that. This dam has a high potential, if it is removed, to yield a lot of wood from the timber crib design. And so that wood can be taken out and reutilized. It can be used in a museum, a display, on site or off site. I know Logansport talked about taking some of that wood from the 1828 dam and making some benches along the river and putting some plaques on it to say what it came from and what it was used for. There's lots of different things you can do that, yes, you do lose some. You do lose some. And all of us that have lived a while know that that's going to happen regardless. We lose some of our history, unfortunately. Now, I would be a huge advocate that we don't just go around tearing things down and destroying buildings. And I will always speak against that. There should be a reason and a purpose for that. And then if it has to be altered and changed, what are we doing to preserve the history, document the history as best as possible? And that's my job. I will be an advocate for you if the municipality or the county decides to eventually remove the dam. I will be an advocate for you to save as much of that history as is possible. Yes, sir.
There was a professor at ISU named Bob Constantine. I think he died. He was the person that single-handedly got people together and saved the Eugene B. Debs. That's a National Historic Landmark.
Yes.
I believe that was the first one in Indiana. Indianapolis didn't have a National Historic Landmark for a long time. And Constantine said that Terre Haute has kind of a 19th century mentality. A handful of people that control the money here prevent just enough progress to prevent a revolution. That's a direct quote from Bob. Unless it's heard.
Any other questions? Yes.
What's the county plan on moving the property after if this land is removed? Are they gonna move the property? Are they gonna sell it off? Is it gonna be, not gonna be much there to see? What's their plan for the future?
I can confidently tell you we're not giving up the park to anybody. We're not selling it to anybody. It will always be under Butte County ownership from here on out. I mean, there's been no developer, no person approach us, offer us any money for it. We're just in a situation of a letter we received, and what's the correct way to move forward with it. I understand. Yeah. Adam Grossman here is from the Parks Department. He can talk about potential activities or things we could have at the park. Adam, if you want to talk about that.
Yep, I just like you guys wanted to hear some thoughts. Whether the commissioners end up taking this thing down or not. If we do move forward with that, we've heard some great ideas from other communities about building dams out of the structure that's there. If we do this, when we mobilize in here and we'll make improvements to the park, we'll put out new benches and grills and things. But it's not going to go anywhere. We've got newer playground equipment there and make improvements to the park as well. me personally, after listening to this, you know, there's really, Burke Engineering, I don't know, you know, that we had asked that question, can you rebuild this dam? And they said, kind of. Talking to the state of Indiana, it's not gonna be a low-head dam, we can't rebuild one of those. It'd have to be this step-down dam, it's gonna be over $5 million, just kinda off the cuff, trying to figure out a number. So, you know, we're talking millions of dollars for a dam that's not the one that we need now. So eventually, nature's gonna take this thing out, and we can use money that's not gonna be as much to the county, as much of a burden on the county that we could have available before it breaks, and restore this, open up the walkway that goes back down to the dam after it's removed, for people to be able to access down below and make other park improvements. But the Vigo County Parks operates and programs this Markham Mill site. The commissioners own the site, but we'll always program and continue to make improvements as well. After hearing all of this, you know, I support the commissioners whatever direction they go. But we'll make it the best park that we can make it either direction. Is that an answer? Fish question? Yes. There was new playground equipment put in, I would hate to tell you, 4 or 5 years ago. You remember? 4 or 5 years ago, put new playground equipment in, rehab the gazebo that's there. The gazebo that's there needs a roof, but we put playground equipment. Not to the dam, no.
The commissioners in 2001, this was never I don't know where my engineer went. This was never something that we would typically inventory. If it was a site that worked, Bridgeton, for example, which is now it's energy, electric energy, right? They're producing, or I can't remember what they're doing up there. If we had a mill with a real mill that turned in a building, and employees in Vigo County had staff there, we would probably consider, we would definitely consider rehabbing the mill. But at this point, it serves no purpose other than looks. And I think that's where we're at this point. And I understand your question too, the part about personal choice.
That never had a bill wheel.
I know, yeah. I'm just saying, for example, if we were to build something.
They had a Mansfield. People think wheels have to have an overshot or an undershot wheel. And the one at Mansfield is a turbine mill. It's a low head dam with water that comes underneath and turns the turbines. And people complain so much in the Covered Bridge Festival that when they removed the mill wheel on the outside, which didn't do anything, the shaft didn't go in the building. People complain, but then they're a mill wheel, can't be a mill. This one was a turbine mill, just like the one Mansfield.
Chris, I just got one thing. I know you want to get through this informational meeting. It's not a Q&A, but I think everyone here would agree. You've got high-speed internet up there now, which fooled me. I thought it was a meter. It is a meter, but it's there for high-speed internet. I think everyone here can agree this park, although we put some money into it, is probably one of the poorest maintained parks in the whole system. And one of the reasons is it's a tough park to maintain. It floods, logs wash up in and wash out. But the biggest problem is there's people afraid to take their families there.
Yes,
because of some of the element. Now, if we're gonna take this thing out, say you have to take it out. Could we then take a little bit better care of the park? I know it's an awful park to take care of.
So, same concerns. I actually have concerns with the folks that own the old Markle home. Over the course of this conversation, there's been people that's been kind of walking on their property because they think the county still owns it. No question, are not good activities that happen at that park. We see it at parks all across the county. We can talk to Sheriff Blassie about getting more deputies there to watch that. We've talked about trail cams. Now that we have electricity there as well, somebody has to pay for that high-speed internet there, which is the county's responsibility. We talked about hooking up a camera at that site. That's all things that we discussed, and I don't think we as commissioners, or Adam has, I think we can come up with a great plan to, if there are wood timbers there, Scott, my gosh, I'd love to get those out and use those in some capacity, either whether it's in the Historical Society Museum or on site there. So yeah, we're open to all that stuff. I mean, this conversation, just God love the tribute, sorry Dave, I love you, Cronky. The headline that was out there was removing the dam. We're just having a conversation about what's the next step with the dam. And the issue is personal responsibility. As long as people are going to take that personal choice to walk on that dam and go out there, and if they fall and get killed, although it's their personal choice, I gotta go to bed at night and think about what I didn't do to prevent that person from walking out there on that dam. So we have signs, we put a fence up. You know, that's a big deal. So. Yes, ma'am.
Just to kind of go over that right there. I live in Park County. Sugar Creek, there's Lakeland, all these places with water. Every year, somebody ran into Grafton. Every year, somebody decided to jump off a bridge in Sugar Creek and break the dam. It's continuous. That's all personal choice. And yeah, it's a sad thing, but when these guys either get drunk or throw the beer in their canoe to go down Sugar Creek and they get drunk, that's personal choice.
I don't disagree.
And
I guess I don't understand why it would, I mean, if somebody breaks into my house and I shoot them, I'm gonna sleep at night.
I don't think that's what the state said when they passed this law. They said that they're passing the responsibility to whoever the owner of that dam is. What we're talking about is how we minimize the risk to Vigo County, to every person in Vigo County. And I guess you're from Park County, so that wouldn't bother you if we had to pay more taxes or whatever, or for insurance claims or whatever, and we will get.
But I did live here.
But you don't now.
Exactly. But
So you don't pay taxes, so you don't in Vigo County, and this is just risk assessment, and that's what we're talking about.
Have the fish guy tell us what happens if somebody's standing under it when it goes out.
Duh. Let's just hope that doesn't happen.
I'm just saying, that's not a personal choice if it goes when you're down there.
Well, I think, the thing to circle back to, folks, is that, and everybody here has sort of spoken to that, and I just want to make sure that it stays central in your thinking, is that nature is wearing on that dam. The dam is going to fall down. And I can tell you that funding to remove it through the National Fish Passageway Program, let's just say the dam does fall down, that funding goes away, and then all of the financial burden would refer back to the county. So this is a window of opportunity to help you as you sort through all these things. And this is a great conversation. I'll tell you, this is one of the best discussions in any community I've ever been in to talk about Lowhead Dam, and good for you. But just remember that nature will remove that dam, and it's not going to be long.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Just wanted to introduce myself. I feel
Poor Chris has had to come up here and answer all these questions a little bit, but he's done a great job with the PowerPoint. Mark Fleming Beard, District 1, this is in my district. I can just tell you that nobody loves local history more than I do. I live probably a half a mile from the old Erie Canal lock. I think it's lock 47. Stones are still there. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen. I'd hate to see that, and right now we can't even get back to see it. I've driven up here all my life and I've seen that, and the first thing I heard, I've only known about this about a month. Like, oh my goodness, that's a landmark. And I get it. I mean, I don't want to see local history removed. I didn't want to see the Terre Haute House removed. I I mean, a lot of these things, the four corners. But you know what? At the end of the day, if somebody does die, that's on my watch. And it's different, you know, and it's also on all our, you know, the county's going to be sued also. I want to do everything I can. I want to do everything I can to protect our local history. But to think that I could have done something to prevent a death and I didn't, that's on me.
Well, any other questions before are we probably close to wrap up? Oh, we have more questions?
Does Vigo Kennedy have liability insurance?
Question is, does Vigo County have liability insurance? The answer was yes.
The city doesn't. I don't think the city does.
I didn't know it did to the county. We don't know where you put out money to repair that. It's so expensive. Like the government can take care of it. Tax collection. Got places to care of the county. Like the paper, I don't care about fuel picking. Because bothering the eyesight of people who go to that meeting down there, we gave them money to build that site, the taxpayers. And why is that? Let's build care that one. They own that property. Why are we paying?
That's not a question for me.
Sure, Jerry, I'm not pushing it. The county does own that property. We leased that property to Tim Drake for $1. He has paid and done all the improvements on that property. The IP property is a building that is currently, I bet you could go there right now and there would be a fire inside of it. There's a lot of homeless people living inside there. We're afraid somebody's gonna get hurt. Also, it's a huge liability for the county, and we're afraid that fire department's been there almost 10 times last year putting fires out in that building. So we just want to remove the safety concern. I'll come talk to you afterward about that. I don't want to. Yeah. Any other questions for Jerry? No. And a question about the side-by-sides, I think that gentleman left, you know, that people own to the center of the creek, and that's private ground, so there should be side-by-sides on there. We have 8 acres there, I can't tell you exactly.
It's behind the creek.
Oh, no.
So that'd be public access.
Well, it's all private property on both sides of the creek.
Who owns
But
that?
on the creek is,
That's what we got on meeting.
but on the creek is private or public property.
On the property that Vigo County owns, yes. But once you cross that line, to private property.
Beacon has, the creek is owned by nobody. I mean, the other side, both sides. Beacon, we show the creek is not owned. Is that Beacon wrong?
We just had a conversation last year, because there was potential for a kayak launch there, which we're not moving forward with that, but, there's a lot of back and forth with homeowners in that area, and we determined that to the center of the creek, the private property owner owns. Yep.
Back in, the flood that we had back in 2001, would you say that that is a contributing factor to the decay of what happened? Because I remember it, it was literally this far away from the road that curves around. It was that high, the water was. And they shut down that portion of the road for a little while for safety issues. But, I mean, I didn't know if all that water that was there for however long, had anything to do with.
So it's a chronic, absolutely. I mean, the more water that comes through there, the more pressure it puts on it. It's just physics at that point. You have concrete that only has a lifespan of so many years. You have that pressure of the water. You have the pressure of the sediment behind the dam. I don't know about here, but I know up in our part of the state, we get big ice chunks that come up against the dams, and that'll take them out too. Now, in the case of Colliver, who knows what caused that foundation to blow out? I don't know. I mean, after time, that river's just a constant force, and it just chronically wears out the structural integrity of the things we put in its way. Yep. But there was a lady who had a question. Oh, there you are. So that's the what? Most, well, you'll be surprised how much of it leaves, but go ahead. Yeah. No, there'll be no change in the flood frequency. The same volume of water is going to go through, yeah, and that water is going to move that sediment where it wants it to go. Yeah. So this removing that dam will have no effect on the frequency of flooding. Zero. Yeah.
The best way to look it up is on Beacon, but if you want to, if you happen to be by my office, I'll be happy to show you or give you a printout of what that boundary looks like. It's a big diamond-shaped piece of property, 8 acres. And it is property on the other side of the creek as well, and on further back to the south.
Have you been in communication with the property owners that evidence that?
No.
I mean, the ones you're saying to look up on Beacon, have you been in communication at all with those people that are back behind there, that would own that adjoining property?
We have not.
Why would?
What's your question?
I just didn't know why we would have to talk to people that butt up against the property.
The flow of the water or the flow of their land, cause them a problem.
Terry, do you want to address some of these concerns? Mr. Mosley can probably answer some of these questions.
I know we're about out of time, but I wanted to make a couple comments based upon some of the comments I've heard here. First off, with the other job I do, there's nobody that believes in personal responsibility and personal accountability more than I do. But I want to say this is a little different situation. We know about the danger. We have a letter from the state. We've heard that the dam's going to collapse. And so the county is going to be liable if we don't do something. And we leave what I call a danger just to sit there knowing that people go in there every day and it's going to collapse. If we walk in this building tonight, we took the personal responsibility to walk in here. And if the building collapses while we're in here, and no one knew about it in advance, the building hadn't shaken last week, and they hadn't seen things come down from the roof, yeah, no liability. But when you know in advance it's a county's property, that there's a problem, and now if somebody gets hurt or killed there, I guarantee you there's going to be all kinds of lawsuits. And that's going to affect, yes, the county has insurance, but guess what? They decide how much they charge you each year for your insurance based upon claims and the amount of payouts and all those things. So, in my opinion, legally, I would tell any client, if I knew this, you got to do something, you got to act. So, I'm not saying what the proper answer or way to act, that's why the commissioners get to make that decision, but I am saying you have to do something. Yes?
What's the case law in Indiana on dams and dredges?
It depends. I don't know what you mean case law.
Well, what kind of verdicts is there been? Obviously, you're talking about if somebody drowns, you're going to have a lawsuit.
Well, let me give you an example.
I want to know if there's, Indiana is kind of a conservative state.
I mean, when you say case law, there's thousands of cases.
Do you know what case law is?
Of course.
So do I.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean case law? Jeez.
When I say case law, I mean you could have 500,000 different types of cases. You're going to have to be more specific than that as far as, are you talking jury awards? Are you talking what vicinity in the state? What kind of case? Are you talking drowning? Are you talking that somebody falls in and hits their head and fractures it and dies? What kind of case?
What we're talking about here this evening, case law on drowning on Lowhead dams.
I can get you that.
Well, I can get it too.
Okay?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I was an insurance agent for over 40 years, and
If you know the danger,
it's tough getting
if you know the danger, and the accident happens, it's negligence.
Correct.
That's the bottom line. It's negligence, you're negligent, but you know that you have a hazard.
Correct. Yes.
All right, Terry, my concern is before anything gets taken out, we need to work with the railroad. Because if they have a derailment and you drop them tanks, stuff like that got there in Ohio, it's gonna be a major problem.
Well, I'd recommend that whatever we do here, obviously contact be made with the railroad and all those kind of things, and all those pieces be looked at.
They've been in there some time itself.
Yes.
All right, 7:31, appreciate the civil conversation. We'll be back here in 2 weeks, same time, same location. Thank you.